If you currently feel like you're empty and you don't have anything left to give, like you don't have any more strength, I'm going to go through the scriptures and give you some helpful pointers to encourage you, to help hopefully and strengthen you as well, and look towards God in this moment. If you're new here, what's up? My name's Christian. I make content about mental health and social issues, all from a biblical perspective, so that we can all heal, grow, and make an impact on the world as Christ intended. So the inspiration for this video really came from, me actually. I've been feeling kind of weak. Like I didn't have as much strength recently. And I felt that was pretty ironic. However, there are some things that I'm currently doing, or when I feel like I'm weak, there is a strategy I kind of take, or some things I keep in mind when I'm feeling weak to help me not just give up, help me to not just spiral into depression or into hopelessness. Okay, so the first thing that we need to really keep in mind as believers is that God never called us to rely on our own strength. And to help illustrate this, we're going to head into 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. So for a bit of context, this is Paul writing here, and he's talking about an affliction that he was experiencing. And even though he pleaded with God 3 times, God did not remove it from him. So starting at verse 7, it says, "So to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from being conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong.'" That is a mentality I really try to keep in mind when I am going through it, or when I feel like my strength is spent. I don't have any more, and I'm just completely empty. That we don't have to rely on our own strength. And in fact, when we are weak, that is when we are made strong, because it isn't our strength that's at work. It isn't, our talents that's at work. It's God's strength that's at work. Something that really encourages me and, helps me to feel some relief is the fact that God knows our strengths and our weaknesses, and God doesn't expect us to be strong all the time. As we see here, Paul was pleading with the Lord 3 times to remove this affliction from him, but God didn't respond by taking away the weakness or taking the thing that was afflicting him, but he responded by saying to rely on him, that the grace that Paul had because of the blood of Christ was enough for him. And then Paul found hope in that. And because we're covered by the same blood of Christ, we can rely on that as well. I know from personal experience, as someone who can easily be a control freak, or can be seen as the strong one in a lot of circumstances, that it is hard when you feel like you don't have enough strength, or it is hard or unfamiliar to not have, the power to go and do something. But something that really helps me and, can help you as well, and it takes humility to accept, is the fact that God never called us to do things alone. And the fact, a little bit deeper than that, we can't do anything outside of Christ. In John 15, one of my favorite chapters in the book of John, at first starting in verse 4, it says this: "Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." I don't know about you, but so often I find myself striving to do things outside of Christ, striving to do things rather outside of the strength of Christ, outside of, the power of the Holy Spirit. And every time I do that, I find myself unable to do it, or, just full of weakness. But here we read that God never calls us to do things outside of ourselves, outside of him. God never calls us to strive for things in his will outside of him. If you're someone who can be hyper independent like myself, this really does give me a big breath of relief, because I tend to put a lot of things on myself, a lot of to-dos, a lot of expectations. But the fact that I can't do anything outside of God really does help me to just take a step back and to humble myself. I've seen how God really works in this when I go street preaching, for example. Now, I'm an unlikely candidate to go street preaching because I'm someone who was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and I did have social anxiety growing up, not anymore by the grace of God. But still, I'm not much of a public speaker in that way. And especially in the sense of, just going out to where I'm not, it's not organized for me to go and speak on something. So for me to go out on the corner by myself and just scream about Jesus was pretty nerve-wracking. However, once I relied on the strength of God, once I relied on God and God alone, not on my own talents, not on my own, past experiences, but on what God can do, that's when I found strength to go and preach the gospel. So one of my favorite verses to really turn to when I am feeling weak, to remind myself that God is the source of my strength, is a well-known verse, actually, Isaiah 41:10, where it says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Now, I'm a bit of a words nerd, so I like to break down the scriptures into the individual words. And every time you see "I will" from God, that is a promise. So I can rely on the promise that God will strengthen me, that God will help me in whatever it is, whether it be something simple like making my bed and I don't have the strength for that, or it be something me going through a hard trial or in my life. And the foundation of that help is in who God is, in the nature of God. We don't have to fear because He is with us. Him alone is enough. He is our portion. And lastly, I want to go into Philippians 4 and hopefully give a verse that you most likely know a different perspective. So, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, right? But we need to look at the verses prior to that to get the full scope of what Paul is saying in that verse. So just for a bit of context, this is Paul writing to the church of Philippi. And mind you, he's sitting in prison while writing this letter, yet he's giving encouragement to them. Philippians is known also as one of the most happiest books of the Bible, the book of joy that's in the Bible. And I find that really interesting and, a testament of God's power and God's strength and God's joy, the fact that Paul was sitting in prison when he wrote this. And starting at verse 11, it says, "Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me." In the past few weeks, I found myself really meditating on the two verses before Philippians 4:13. The fact that Paul said that he has learned how to be content in all things because he has experienced all things. He's experienced being so low. He's experienced being so high. He experienced having everything and nothing. And in all of that, he's learned that he can do all things through Christ who strengthens him. A great takeaway from this is that the trials that we face can be used to help strengthen us, right? Because I have experienced some severe depression. I have experienced some severe anxiety. I've experienced, some terrible hardships in my life. And I have seen God move in all of those things, even when I couldn't feel Him necessarily. And in retrospect, I know how God was there. So in my moments of weakness, I can take a step back and marvel at the strength of God and really take us and understand that even when I am weak, even when I have nothing more to give, that I can still rely on God's strength and I don't have to do it all in my strength. And God didn't call me to either. I encourage you in that whatever you're going through, whatever you're experiencing, to take a step back and note how God is moving and understand that God's strength is enough, that you don't have to rely on what you feel, whatever strength you feel like you have right now. Hope and pray that this video was encouraging to you. If it was a blessing to you, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content like this. And if you did like this video, you're going to like the one that's on the screen right now. And remember, above all that, you got this because God's got you. Peace out.